so much. Hey, how we doing, Southern California? All right, pretty good. First of all, let's really give it up for Mark Prismic for putting on an amazing event. First time down here. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege. Before I get started, I'd like everyone to stand up real quickly, please. And what I'd like you to do is just give me a couple deep breaths. So I want you to breathe in some just beautiful light. I want you to breathe out all the problems that you came in here with. I just want you to forget everything and to relax your mind. So ready? Okay, grab a seat. All right. I want to start out with a really interesting quote. If you don't change the direction, you may end up where you're headed. Think about that for a second. Time passes so quickly, and as we age, we gain more responsibility with that, seemingly way more lost time. The more things we have, the more we need to work to sustain it, and our families grow, our time dwindles even further. In the blink of an eye, years can pass, and before we know it, many of us are where we never thought we'd be. But that doesn't need to be the case, and today I hope to inspire an awakening in all of you. My talk is about deprogramming your mind of preconceived thinking and making room for your true self to flourish. It's really about actively creating your reality opposed to simply existing in today's world that just gets handed to you. First, a little about myself. I grew up on the East Coast in a pretty normal family. My dad and mom inspired adventure in us all. I had two younger brothers. And as you might guess, I was pretty restless as a kid. And my folks were really trying to get me focused. And they decided to sign me up for wrestling. Say wrestling. Safe to say it worked, but not with a couple takedowns along the way. And I love the competition. I love the craft. I love the camaraderie. And what wrestling did for me is really establish the type of person that I was soon to become. As I grew, I began to take an interest in technology. That interest, coupled with my wrestling ability, actually got me into college, believe it or not, because I was never a great test taker. Wrestling by morning, computer scientist during the day, and party animal at night. Perfect college formula. But by this time, I started to dream big. I started to dream really, really big. And I decided I wanted to move to California at some point in my life and actually start my own tech company. Well, that dream became a reality in 1995. It was there that I met a kindred spirit. He and I, in a 17-page business plan, we set out to create the world's largest web development company. We succeeded in that goal. And as a matter of fact, we were able to create a company worth $3 billion. That's like triple unicorn talk in today's lingo. But I had to take a massive leap of faith to make this dream come true. Because before I started US Web, I had a really pretty cushy job. A friend of mine back there, Willie Donahue, and I worked at this great company, Novell. I was really well paid, but I had a wife at home. I had two young daughters. I had a lot of financial responsibility. So on the outside, I was doing great, really better than great. I was on the path that society expected of me, complacency. But something just didn't feel right. I knew I was at the edge. And it would require great courage and belief in myself to step beyond that edge. I took a big breath. I made that leap, and here I am today. So I retired at 37. Believe it or not, I got really bored. You have a lot of time on your hands, but guess what? All your friends are working. So while I'm trying to surf and golf and travel and invite them, they're like, hey, Toby, we got jobs to do. We can't go on that with you. So I loved nature growing up, had a very deep spiritual connection with me. And during that time, I met this amazing guy named Dr. Richard Leakey. And I joined his nonprofit board of directors. It was based in Africa. And Dr. Leakey wrote a book called The Sixth Extinction. And he really opened up my eyes to climate change and the terrible, terrible situation that he's predicted is here with us today. And I wanted to do something about that. So a few years later, I joined Solar City and later Tesla to help integrate and help establish the adoption of sustainable energy. Because we got a real problem. We have a fossil fuel addiction here in this world, and we've got to be able to change that. I also had the opportunity to work with arguably the world's, what I call, entrepreneur for good, Elon Musk, and the type of work that he's doing so innovative and so groundbreaking. I also spent the last, 10 years having the beautiful opportunity to teach entrepreneurship at Stanford University. I teach 2 entrepreneurship courses there. And most recently, I started a movement called Zentrepreneur Life, which is all about inspiring creativity for greater good. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more later, but hopefully you get the gist of where this talk is going. Now, it's important to note that at each of these crossroads in my life, I needed to take a big leap of faith. And when I went to Solar City, I had absolutely no experience with sustainable energy. Zero. I was a tech guy. Knew nothing about kilowatts and inverters and solar panels. And then when I went to Tesla, I also had to step up because Elon doesn't want another cog in the machine. He's looking for creative people, innovative people, passionate people. And both of these opportunities I wouldn't have been able to achieve without my prior experience in defining my own path. Not following the path of others, actually defining my own path, taking risks in my life, and really stepping outside the accepted norms. Now, throughout my career, I remained a really, really restless soul. And I remain a restless soul, and I kept asking myself this fundamental question. Are we leaving behind great opportunities for future generations to come? And I've been asking myself that question for many, many years, and that question still plagues me today. And if I'm honest, I believe we're leaving a hot mess behind. Climate change is clearly an existential threat. The cost just to repair damages of these heightened storms, the human displacement that we're going to be dealing with, and the atrocity of lost GDP is really unconscionable. And to leave behind less opportunities for future generations is something that really bothers me. So let's dig into this a little bit more. My belief is that humanity is at a crossroads. Are we going to conform and are we going to let conformity prevail where antiquated paradigms run supreme? Just look at the social structures today, the criminal injustice structures today. The system is completely rigged where very few people benefit from society today. The data is overwhelming, the income disparity, the gender inequality. We're working and living in a rigged system today. We all march through life like zombies, what I call following the path of many, following the steps of folks that have rigged the system so that they can gain from that. Or are we going to choose a better way to inspire humanity to think creatively for greater good, not just for myself, but for greater good, allowing for more opportunities to emerge for future generations? Now, Zombieland is a place where conformity just runs supreme, where the objective is to gain capital at the expense of the planet and humanity. It's a place where we must work in an economy that benefits very few. We pay taxes to very corrupt government that's bought and paid for by lobbyists. We deal with antiquated social and criminal injustices, and we use products from unethical, soulless companies. In Zombieland, we simply exist in a structure laid out for us. We don't create our own stories. Zombieland may make for a good movie, but it's not the reality that we really want to face. So, society does an amazing job of programming our minds. And I'm going to get into some detail with this to you today. It all starts with time, right? So let's break down time a little bit here. So here's some data to think about. We spend 1/3 of our time sleeping. On average, we spend 47 hours a week at work. We spend 24 hours a week online and 5 hours a day just consuming media, right? So that means 2/3 of our life is spent just on sleeping and working, 2/3 of it. Think about that. When we only have 1/3 of our lives left, right? What are you doing with that time? Are you spending our time doing the same thing every single day? Is that cycle repeating itself? Suffice it to say, we all have been born with an awesome superpower. We literally have infinite creative capabilities. Creativity is the seed of innovation. Without it, there'd be no society, no industry, no running water, no music, no computers, no cell phones. Creativity is the spark of humanity. It's our unique gift to the planet and is needed to propel society forward. That's what separates us from any other species. Now, our brains have about 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion synapses. This is the neural network. This is what makes you as a person. An expansive neural network equals what's called a term plasticity. How big is that neural network? And our plasticity peaks out at about adolescence. So by the time you get into high school or college, it begins to start to deteriorate. So when I was wrestling and then I was working on computer technology when I was younger, it provided two different modes of thinking that really kept me on my toes. And it increased my ability to take on anything. If you recall as a youth, you probably were doing lots of things. Your mind was working in a really great opportunity with a very expansive network. Being exposed to different perspectives, like different activities, different goals, exercises our brains and allows us to maintain a really high neuroplasticity. Plasticity is our brain's ability to change continuously, adapt to change. It's something like adaptability. Resilience is another word that I've heard about that. It's how we can be successful in a constantly evolving and very chaotic world. When we stop creating, when we stop imagining, and we stop being inspired, our brain's neural network begins to pare back. That's how we lose it, right? Like anything in life. You learn an instrument, you stop playing that, that activity begins to deteriorate. So our brain's neural network begins to pare back, and that's how we begin to lose our creative superpowers. That's how you start to take a one-way ticket into Zombieland. Now, science shows that we lose 50% of this plasticity by the time we're 50, and 100% of the cases. So from adolescence to when you reach 50, you're operating at half the neuroplasticity because you're doing the same things, and that network just begins to pare back. We start to use less and less of our neural network over time, and that's one of the key ingredients to how conformity works. You start to fall into the same traps and start to do the same things. So, when you don't exercise your brain network, it's just gone. So if you don't change direction, you may end up where you're going. So if you spent time with a child, see a show of hands, anyone spent time with a child recently? You'll know what I'm talking about, right? Just look into their eyes. And all that you're going to see is amazement. You're going to see wonderment. You're going to see infinite possibilities because children, they don't see any boundaries. Unbounded, raw creativity where virtually nothing is impossible. It's amazing to look into their eyes. There's nothing there other than just literally pure creativity. Now, Jeff Bezos' number one key to success is what he calls keep a childlike sense of wonderment. He describes how new entrepreneurs, they tend to let their intellectual self overrule their passions. So it takes them a long time to find a business idea that genuinely interests them. On the other hand, children are really good at knowing what they want. They're really good at knowing what their passions are. So you as an entrepreneur should keep a childlike sense of wonder. Not only does it help with creativity at work, but it also leads to just a much happier life in general. All right, let's take this a little bit further, okay? So let's examine creativity in Zombieland and their respective relationships to brain waves. Theta waves are the first step of sleep. As you start to go to sleep, theta waves start to kick in. And when you get into deep sleep, brainwave activity, delta waves start to kick in, right? And sleep is so critical and so important to being able to be your best self, to be as most productive as you can be. Now, when we're working, running errands, picking up the kids from school, spending boatloads of time online, watching TV, we're really, really distracted. And our brains are generating what are called beta waves. There's not a lot of time for creativity because there's so much going on. You're constantly being interrupted, right, with beta waves. Beta waves are also a key ingredient to Zombieland because the more distracted that you are, the more that you buy into just the hype of society, you're not thinking creatively. You're stuck in Zombieland. And you're spending all your time in this infinite loop. You're thinking the same thoughts. You're probably making the same choices. You're doing the same things and feeling the same emotions, being constantly distracted. Thereby, yet another great recipe for how you end up in Zombieland. Does this pattern sound familiar to anybody, or maybe friends that you know? Now, believe it or not, we have an attention span of 8 seconds, and that's gone down. Goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. Now, alpha brainwaves, they aid in overall mental coordination, calmness, alertness, mind-body integration, and learning. When you start to get into an alpha state, you begin to unwind from the day. All the distractions that are going on, all the multitasking that you're trying to do, and these alpha waves, they're dominant during really what I call quiet states of mind. Like getting your mind drifted in a drift when you're walking on the beach, perhaps, or maybe listening to some really relaxing music. Your mind starts to shut down all the stress and all the distractions of the day. So alpha waves are really good for you. Now, the gammas, they correlate with large-scale brain network activity, right? We're using all this incredible neural network that you have. Now, neuroscientists believe that gamma waves can link information from all parts of the brain. That's the only wavelength that allows you to be in that kind of state. It gives you the feeling of, anyone ever be in the zone? Maybe playing sports or in a musical play where you just feel like you're in that zone. You're generating gamma waves at that time. And this state of mind is where we unlock all of our natural creative superpowers. I like to call it the flow state. Understanding what drives your brain waves is the key to unlocking all of your potential, reducing stress, and living a fulfilling, just absolutely beautiful life. It's all key to understanding how to deprogram your mind to really find your true self, okay? Now, through my work at Stanford and having the opportunity to have worked with some of the greatest business and most creative business minds in the world, and my spiritual journey, I developed a framework that is really designed to help deprogram you to liberate your creative self. So here's how this creative mindset works. There's 3 dimensions up there. The x-axis represents consciousness. You know what consciousness is? I'm going to get to that a little bit deeper. That's the capability to be aware of existence. That is to feel things, to perceive things, and experience subjectively. Science has no clue where consciousness exists or where feelings reside. It's one of the great mysteries of life. Hasn't been figured out yet. I have some theories on that, but that's another talk. Now, the y-axis represents wisdom. That's the ability to think and act using knowledge and experience, understanding common sense and insights that you have, right? So it's getting information, how you convert that into knowledge and wisdom. And finally, the z-axis, that's the process of causing what I call willful human bodily movement, or simply stated, just the act of doing. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. So when I'm focusing on how I deprogram my mind, I focus on expanding within all 3 of these dimensions up there. So let's explore them a little bit deeper. So we established a direct link of creative thinking and consciousness by getting ourselves into a gamma wave brain state. So let's talk about how you do that. Meditation is one of the best ways to do that, to expand consciousness. Focused breathing, affirmations, daily walks in nature, practicing more gratitude, love, compassion, right? These are all activities, things that get you in the flow state. For me, it's surfing. For some of you, maybe it's yoga. Mindfulness activities, and really just unplugging from all the constant distractions that you get on a daily basis, right? Sometimes it's literally just noticing a leaf or feeling the breeze on your face, right? So they're virtually unlimited of number of activities you can do to expand consciousness. And that's the bedrock of unlocking all your creative superpowers. Now, wisdom, that's the collection of information and transforming that into knowledge, allowing you to expand your thinking to make better and more informed decisions. Expanding along the wisdom dimension is all about acquiring what I call an insatiable appetite for learning. Once you stop learning, your brain begins to pare back. Again, if you watch the same TVs, go to the same mobile website, all of that, that's all zombie land. So really acquiring this insatiable appetite to learn is absolutely critical. And that for me is reading enriching books, really great material that expands my mind. So creativity is really all about how do you add more data points in your life? Because the more data points, the more creative that you can be, right? And that will help you generate more ideas, and it gives you different ways to look at the world versus literally staying in a closed zombie land society. Now, one of the best ways to expand along the wisdom dimension for me is this concept of open networks. And that's really all about connecting with lots of diverse people. taking lots of really great ideas, really expanding yourself. And many folks in Zombieland, they literally do the same thing with the same people. It's like staying virtually in the same swim lane. So connecting with more people with lots of different backgrounds and acculturations, right? Staying in the same swim lane, that's not good for you. So by having an open network, it really expands your mind, inspires you, and opens up more and more opportunities than you could ever imagine. And finally, the action dimension is all about what I call the doing part of life. What are you going to do? So the only thing in life that you can never get back is time. You have a beginning and a middle and an end to this existence. And that time is finite. So if you smash your car or your bike, you can get a new bike or get a new car, get it fixed, right? If you break your cell phone, you get a new one, maybe a newer model. If you rip your jeans, you can sew them, or maybe having ripped jeans is really cool, right? But the point is that you can never get time back. It's gone. So how are you using your time, right? Are you doing the same things day in and day out, just killing time? Literally cycling through the same social media, the same mobile app 150 times a day? Or are you exploring your edges? Are you trying new things? Are you meeting new people with new ideas and new energy? Are you helping others? Are you improving? And are you growing as a human being? Are you staying really low in all these dimensions here, right? Now, I ask this because in Zombieland, folks pretty much do the same thing every single day, right? That's a key ingredient to staying in Zombieland. Same mobile apps, same websites, watch the same TV shows, and hang out with the same people. That neural network is pairing back as fast as it possibly can. They think the same thoughts every day, and their programming never changes. That's the point. Society's programming you to benefit very few. And all the superpower you're giving up, right? So in Zombieland, you're around folks that are always complaining. They're always blaming their troubles on other people, right? But the beauty of it is you can get out of Zombieland. It's 100% in your power to do that. So I focus my attention on what I call forward momentum, right? So this means getting involved in lots of really interesting activities, really pushing myself out there, constantly challenging myself and never being satisfied. It's important to note that you actually can be fulfilled and never be satisfied, right? It's all about the chase. It's all about the journey, the goal, to get to that distance. I've surfed some of the biggest waves in Indonesia way over my head, right? It was exhilarating, but super scary all at the same time. I started cage fighting at 50 years old. Try getting into a cage when you're going to fight some 21-year-old, right? And when I went to work for Solar City in Tesla, I said, I knew nothing about this industry. I was a tech guy. I had to learn all of that, but I embraced those challenges. I worked hard to be my best and thrived on all those obstacles that were thrown my way. So the action dimension is all about stretching yourself to the max. The action dimension is super important because studies show that when folks are nearing death, right, their universal regret is not doing X, Y, or Z in life. And there was a famous Indian guru named Osho, and he was an absolute force of nature. He was a prolific speaker. And he said that, quote, the fear of death is the fear of time. And the fear of time is deeply the fear of unlived moments and unlived life. Live more intensely, live more dangerously, it's your life, end quote. That really resonated with me, right? So I say, live your life. Don't just exist in it. And for me, that means living my life as much as possible out over my skis, getting myself out of my comfort zone, right? Blasting past edges, testing the waters on my own before saying no to anything. I'll take on anything almost, right? Now, deprogramming your mind starts with awareness, self-evaluation, courage to step outside of what's been done before. This is how we really live our best life and expose our true self. It's not following other people. It's using all this great creative power that we have. So I look at life through two lenses these days. One lens is what I call really, really tactical, and that's where we are constantly fighting the complete rigged system. We got to keep fighting that for what's right. The second one is strategic, and that one is figuring out how do we pour more rocket fuel into future generations, and those that I call awakened ones, those that have a clue. because they're wired like no other generation, right? I see it every time I talk to a college student or I talk to someone that's doing something different. I see the type of people that they're working to become. I see their uncompromising values. And more importantly, I see their inclusiveness about helping other people, not just themselves. And I see their creative mindset. And they, quote, be the challenge that they wish to see in the world. I see it every day. And I've got a grandson, I got a granddaughter on the way, and I'm pretty confident that future generations are going to have more opportunities than they know what to do with. So, as I mentioned at the top of my presentation, I've been working on this Zentrepreneur Life platform, which is all about how to inspire creativity for greater good. And it's just the start of a conversation built around that great creative mindset that I just went through with you. And there's 21 principles, but let me focus on the 3 that are my favorites, right? So the first one is to define your own path, right? Too many people follow in the footsteps of others. That's been a recurring theme of my talk today. They succumb to the strong gravitational pull of just a really comfort, cushy life. They lose their infinite creative powers, and they sacrifice an amazing life for a dull one. They start thinking with a new creative mind. Challenge yourself to be your best by defining your own path, right? Create your own opportunities and embrace being uncomfortable in your life. It may sound scary, but it's the most greatest exhilarating thing. And number 2, I love this phrase, which is the real prize is really the journey. Because we all get caught up in our goals and aspirations, and then life ends. And we wonder where it all went. There's an old expression, stop and smell the roses, right? The real prize is the journey, chasing dreams, falling down, getting back up, and doing it all over again. Now, when I used to wrestle, my coach would say to me, Toby, leave it all out there, leave it all on the mat, right? Nothing in the tank, come off the mat empty. I love that quote. And as I think about life, the journey is all about leaving it, all of it, everything out there, and exiting on empty, right? To me, that sounds like a pretty good way to go. And lastly, explore your edges, right? This principle is all about pushing yourself well beyond what you think you can do, because others typically see more of actually what you're capable of doing. You're the only one holding yourself back. Have the courage and the conviction to take risks, getting yourself out way over your skis, as I love to say. And it's both scary, it's exhilarating all at the same time. And I remember I went skydiving solo after literally a 4-hour lesson. And I remember flying up to 14,000 feet, and as I'm jumping out of the plane by myself after a 4-hour lesson, I was thinking, this has to be one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life. And you know what? It was a really stupid-ass thing to do. But it was an exhilarating feeling, and I say take the leap. It doesn't have to be at 14,000 feet, but no matter what, it can feel really exhilarating. Now, lastly, we all go through lots of challenges in life. You never know what's going on in someone's life till you're walking in their shoes. Some really big, some small. And life is constantly changing. It's throwing you twists. It's throwing you turns. My advice is the magic is always to find the flow. Because there's always a flow. You just have to be creative to find it. Thank you for sharing your amazing energy with me. Thank you, and Godspeed.